On the day you signed the historic Bail Bond Reform Bill and the Opportunity to Compete Act, I indicated to you that it had been too long since you had been before the state conference of the NAACP to address its membership. You agreed and graciously accepted my invitation to come with us today, and we say thank you. As shown in the clip, I also indicated that you and I have not always agreed on every issue, and that's okay. But I'm sincerely hoping that when we leave here today, there will be a joint commitment between you and I, that we will be able to engage in some much overdue conversations on those issues where there is presently a divide. It is most certain that none of us will ever get everything we want, but mature leadership, Governor, is leadership that can find common ground. And if we fight, the citizens of the state suffer, but if you and I work together, we can do great things to benefit those that we serve. One example is bail bonds reform, which indicates that defendants will receive a speedy trial. You have the power and ability to make that work. And in order for that to work effectively, however, we need the appointment, Governor, of some judges. And if I may, Governor, the appointment of more African-American judges. I also look to you to reappoint the only black female prosecutor presently in the state of New Jersey, Ms. Jennifer Webb McCrae from Cumberland County. We need to talk about unemployment, jobs and job creation, rebuilding our schools and inner cities, inner city policing and community safety, the pension deficit crisis, and the, at times, unfair attack on public employees and unions, our school systems in Newark, and in Camden, the rising cost of college tuition for our young brothers and sisters, foreclosures in New Jersey and the disproportionate adverse effect it has had on people of color. And one of the most richest states in the country, we still have a high rate of poverty, leaving a huge gap between the haves and the have-nots. And so, Governor, as I said on the clip, we gave relief to a lot of New Jerseyans, and a lot of New Jersey citizens with bail bond reform and the Opportunity to Compete Act, but relief in New Jersey is still needed for those without jobs, for those without homes, for those who need tax relief, for those who need safe streets and neighborhoods, for those who need a high-quality public education. Let us leave here today, Governor, with not the mere perception of us being all in for justice and equality, but let's together, you and I, leave here today, both of us, making a commitment to make it a true and sincere reality. You don't need me to read your bio because we all know who you are, but we know how to treat company. We're happy that you're here, and we look forward to engaging in conversation.
I listened carefully to the list of issues that Richard just went over. I'm tired after listening to his list of issues. And I need to schedule a meeting with you for next week to get going, because I only got 3 years left, Richard. I thank you all for being here. I thank Richard for both his introduction and for sparing me the reading of my bio. When you're governor, you know, people go on the website and they take your bio off the website and then they introduce you that way. And I probably give 600 or 700 speeches a year, which means I probably hear my own bio 400 or 500 times. I am tired of me. So thank you for sparing me of that. And also thank you for the invitation today. It was a sincere and genuine one, and I'm very, very happy to be here. What I'd like to do is talk a little bit in detail about some of the things that we've done together and then also address some of the issues that Richard raised in his introduction. First is we defied political expectations in the last year. Political expectations are that a Republican governor will never find common ground with the NAACP on any issues of real import. Yet the work that we've done together over the course of the last year, and I'd say really it's been more than that, it's been about 2 to 2.5 years since I first raised in the State of the State Address the issue of bail reform and having to change a really badly broken bail system in this state, was a perfect model for how Republicans and Democrats, folks inside the government and interest groups outside the government, the legislative branch and the executive branch work together to work through a very difficult, complicated, thorny issue, and in fact, wind up with a piece of bigger and broader legislation than was even initially contemplated. So we first began to discuss bail reform. We talked about it on the two ends of bail reform that was needed. First, on the end of what I have been calling debtor's prison in New Jersey. We all know that the bail bond community and the system that New Jersey has had in place has kept thousands of people in our county jails for inordinate periods of time merely because they didn't have $250 as the cash option to get bail. And this was an anomaly to me when I became governor, because we didn't have this problem in the federal system in the 7 years that I was U.S. Attorney. You see, we had a system that could monitor folks upon release, that could have them check in on a regular basis in different stages of it. We didn't have it at the state level. And what it did, the effect of it, was to keep people in county jails for a very long time, regardless of their ultimate guilt or innocence. Now, this is wrong. It's wrong, and it is contrary to our justice system's belief that we're supposed to have equal justice for all. In this instance, it was only equal justice for those who had the money to be able to buy justice for themselves. And so, yes, this will cost us some more money in the long run to have this type of system. But the Senate President and I worked together to increase fees in certain areas of the legal system, not only to be able to set up this system and have it work effectively, but also to give greater funding to legal aid so that folks who needed to avail themselves of government-appointed attorneys would have more government-appointed attorneys available to them, and that those government-appointed attorneys could be paid a more competitive wage for the service that they're providing to the people of our state in need. The second part of bail reform also disproportionately affected our cities. We had a bail system that rewarded those who engaged in violent but lucrative conduct. Our violent drug dealers and others across the state, who there was no bail that was too high for them to be able to meet the cash alternative, because when you're in a lucrative drug business, coming up with cash to get yourself out of jail is not typically a problem. And what would happen when those violent criminals with rap sheets of repeated violent acts went back to our neighborhoods? They intimidated witnesses and prevented cases from being brought. They committed further violent acts and made the neighborhoods in our cities and throughout this state much, much more dangerous to live and work in. Now, this was also an anomaly to me as governor, because in the federal system, you could consider two things. A judge could consider two things when deciding whether to grant bail. Not only the opportunity someone has to flee the jurisdiction, which we could also consider in the state system, but also dangerousness to the community. Now, that seems to me to be a valid thing for an independent judge to consider. But in New Jersey state system, we didn't permit that. Under the amendment that's on the ballot in 24 days, voters will decide whether to amend our Constitution to allow judges to consider that factor. Now, what we've seen federal judges do with that over the years is to still bail most people. But those truly dangerous sociopaths who prey on all of the innocent folks in our society have been detained prior to trial based upon their past conduct, their past conduct and their record of violent criminal activity. I believe that if this is passed in November, this will make many neighborhoods safer and will make law enforcement more effective, because witnesses will not have to worry about being intimidated pending trial by wrongdoers who leave jail just because they have the money to do so. At the same time, I work closely with the Senate President and Senator Cunningham on ban the box legislation. And what I said to the Senate President and to Senator Cunningham at the time is, let's do this all at once. See, it's tough enough to do things in Trenton. I tried to do some stuff like this in separate pieces. Let's put it this way. If you think the tolls are bad on the New Jersey Turnpike or the Garden State Parkway, you should see some of the tolls I have to pay to get legislation moved in the New Jersey State Legislature. And so let's put it all together. Let's do it together. And that's another place where your organization and many others were integral in making sure that we got this legislation to a place where Democrats and Republicans could support it in the legislature and where I could sign it. And so today we have a new day in New Jersey for those who deserve a second chance. See, I believe that every life is an individual gift from God. Yeah. And that every person is precious and needs to be treated that way. Now, you know, it's easy for some in our society to say that they are pro-life when the life is in the womb. See, they haven't disappointed us then, but people come out of the womb and they make mistakes. And when they make mistakes, we need to decide, are we pro-life then too? Do we believe that the person who is drug addicted and committed crimes to move forward that disease, when they get a handle on their disease and the tools to make themselves feel better, do they deserve another chance? Or must they wear that stigma for their entire lives, affecting their ability to be employed, affecting their ability to raise their families and support them, affecting their abilities to be volunteers in organizations, affecting their ability to be contributing, functioning, good members of society after they've paid their debt? It seems to me that the answer to that is yes, they deserve that chance, and that this was the perfect time to package all this together. Because the way I view this is second chance legislation in New Jersey. A second chance for those who were incarcerated for minor crimes but are too poor to bail themselves out. They get a second chance to come out and make something of their lives. Our neighborhoods in New Jersey that have suffered from crime, well, we keep those most violent sociopaths in jail so they have a second chance to reclaim their neighborhoods. And for those who have committed crimes and paid their debts to society, by banning the box, we give them a second chance to be able to get a good job, to support their families, and to be productive members of society. See, I don't think second chances are the domain of just Democrats or Republicans. Because from my perspective, we have sinners and wrongdoers plenty in both parties. All of them want a second chance. And so I'm happy and proud that we've worked together to do this, and I hope the voters approve the amendment in 24 days, and if they do, we will have completed a very, very important project for justice and for a better, more hopeful day for our state in the years to come. We've also passed groundbreaking legislation on second chances in the area of drug addiction as well. This is a disease that touches everyone. Everyone. I don't care what your race is, what your ethnicity is, what your socioeconomic status is. There is not a person I suspect in this room or across this state who has not had a family member, a friend, a business associate, a neighbor who has been affected by the disease of drug and alcohol addiction. All of us as parents live by the phrase, "There but for the grace of God go I." Any one of us or our children could make one bad decision, one time, and depending upon their genetic makeup, they could become addicted after one bad decision in one bad night. And does that give a commentary on what kind of parents we are? I don't believe so. And does it give a commentary on what kind of person the person who's fallen victim to this disease is? I don't think so. I've seen many too many people in my life fall victim to this and know that some of them have availed themselves of treatment and restored their lives, and others have availed themselves of treatment and failed. I've spoken frequently recently about a very good friend of mine who I went to law school with, who was one of, for any of you who may in this audience be lawyers and can think back to law school, you remember the people who were in your study group your first year of law school. Those are your brothers and sisters for the rest of your life, because you're all scared, you have no idea what you're doing, and you're grasping onto each other to try to make sure you make it through that first year. And there were 6 of us in that group. One of them was the smartest one in the group, got the best grades, was an editor of the law review, got a job at a great law firm, was the first to get to become partner of the group of us, married a beautiful woman, had 3 beautiful daughters, and seemingly had the perfect life. An athlete in college, and because of all of his athletic pursuits and his continued obsession with running 5 miles a day, every day, he hurt his back. He went to the doctor and they gave him pain medication. They gave him Oxycontin. And never having had that before in his life, he started to take it, and unfortunately, because of who he was and what his background was, he liked it too much. And when that wasn't good enough and he couldn't get enough of those, he combined it with alcohol. And finally, his friends, myself included, started getting calls from his partners. There's something wrong with him. He's not functioning the way he used to. He's late to work, he leaves early. He's not as reliable. His wife finally called and told us what was going on. And that group of us, that small group of us, went and did an intervention with him and got him to treatment. That was the first of 12 different treatment facilities that he went to over the course of the next 10 years. And 6 months ago, I got the call on a Sunday morning that I had been dreading I would get for 10 years, that they found him in a motel room in West Orange with an empty bottle of Oxycontin and an empty quart of vodka, dead. Having been divorced, having lost his ability to practice law, his ability to drive a car, having spent all the money out of his retirement account but $2,000 that was left, all because he could not deal with that addiction. See, it happens to everybody. No matter who you are or where you're from, it can happen. And so we need to make treatment more available to folks. I was in Trenton this week and met with 3 young women who went through the drug court program, and each one of them said to me that the drug court program saved their lives. We need to make that available in every county, and because we work together with the Senate President and the Speaker, we passed that legislation, we're funding that legislation, and in 2 more years, drug court will be available in every county in New Jersey, so that those first-time offenders, the first time they get involved in the system because of their drug abuse, will not be incarcerated. Mandatory incarceration for drug abuse is no longer the law in New Jersey because we work together. Now it's mandatory treatment for those folks. And even for the hard-hearted among us who don't care, don't think that each life is precious and deserves to be saved, think about this. It costs us $48,000 a year to incarcerate someone in state prison. It costs $25,000 a year to put them for a year in inpatient drug treatment. So even if, and I hope I don't offend any accountants out here, but even if you're just an accountant, even if you're just an accountant and you're just adding up the figures, this makes sense too. This is something we worked on together, and that will benefit all the communities in our state. Again, supported broadly by both Republicans and Democrats, by outside interest groups and folks inside government. We need to find more of these areas of agreement. Now, let me talk a little bit about the issues that Richard brought up. It's great that you brought up judges when we have the Senate president here. He and I have been working extraordinarily hard to get judges appointed. And I will tell you that we're not the problem. We're not the problem. If he and I had our choice every day, we would just get all this stuff done. There's an interesting process in New Jersey. You know, the Constitution says that the governor appoints judges. And that is technically true. Technically. But there's also a part of the Constitution that says the Senate must advise and consent. The interpretation of advise and consent has really evolved over time. And I wish I was governor about 30 years ago and not now. But the evolution of that has become that it is really, in, I would say, 75% of the instances in my 5 years as governor, the senators pick the judges. The senators pick the judges. Now, like, I don't know if I've just released a dirty secret that nobody knew or wanted to talk about, but they say if you don't pick this one, we won't consent on any other ones. And if you're a governor, you got two choices. You can either nominate people that you know will never get confirmed. I've done that. That's not fun. Or you can try to work with them to come up with some accommodation. I will tell you that this Senate president has been better than any in recent memory in terms of trying to force that accommodation. Force me to accommodate and force his members to accommodate. And we need to do more of that. We've had a long stalemate in Essex County that now seems to be breaking, which is good. And the fact is that all along, my point has been this. If we're going to make deals, and I'm all for making deals, because I wake up every morning, everybody, knowing I'm not going to get everything I want. I'm about 5 votes short in the Senate and 9 votes short in the Assembly of getting everything I want. And that's not going to change anytime soon, I suspect. So I have to make accommodations, make deals. Compromise is not a dirty word. But what I need from all of you, talk to your senators. You want more African-American judges on the bench? I'm all for it. Have senators bring more African-American candidates to me. You want more Hispanic members on the bench? I'm all for it. Bring more Hispanic candidates and have the Senate do that as well. We can come together on these things and have in some very important instances. But let's not make the illusion while we're here among friends that, like, I'm sitting in a room by myself making this call. If only the governor would just put these judges on the bench. You know, let's make sure that we share the responsibility. And I'm ready to share that responsibility. And in many ways, the Senate President and I have already, over the course of the last 5 years, and gotten more done than a lot of people would have thought we would have. On the other issues that you mentioned, I am willing and ready to work with your organization to come up with ideas that solve problems in New Jersey that have been intractable for decades, that have been tractable under both Democratic administrations and Republican administrations. And so let's work together to try to solve some of those problems. And I'm ready to address all of those issues that you listed. Now, we may not agree on all of them. On the ones we don't, we'll have a good argument about it. There's a few people out here I've had arguments with over time. That's fine. I'm happy to do that again. And then let the chips fall where they may. But I think we've proven to each other 2 important principles. Principle number 1, the first and most important part in leadership is listening. We need to listen to each other. And by the way, that goes both ways. See, it's not only me listening to you. See, as governor, it's my obligation to listen to you. I represent all 8.9 million people of this state. But you need to listen to me too. because there are realities that we need to deal with in our state that have different points of view. We did that on all the pieces of legislation I just spoke about, and we succeeded by making compromises that maybe each side didn't think they'd be willing to make when they started. But when you got that close, that one more compromise may seem like a big thing to your pride, but in policy and in the effect on people's lives, it wasn't that big a deal. Second part, indispensable part of leadership is speaking the truth. We need to speak the truth to each other. There have also been many people in this audience who have spoken the truth to me over time. And I appreciate that. And I will speak the truth as I see it back to you. See, if we play games with each other, if we do things just for the politics, then we never get down to what it is we really want, what we really need, and the positions we're really willing to negotiate. So we need to be honest with each other. So if you come to me and ask me for something that I know I will never do, I'm going to tell you, I will never do that. That doesn't mean I don't respect you. It means I do. It doesn't mean I don't like you. It's got nothing to do with it. It means we disagree. And we need to do that in a way that's respectful. Now, lastly, because you know, there's certain bait you throw up there that I just can't help but jump at. I think it's interesting that there's this perception of disrespect towards public employees. I find it fascinating. I really do. And here's why. You see, I come out and say what I believe needs to be a policy for the state, whether it's education reform, whether it's spending reform, whether it's tax reform, whether it's litigation reform, any of those issues. I come out and say what I believe. It's my job as governor. I'm obligated to do that. I will tell you, though, at times, that I feel like the disrespect in this relationship has been disproportionate. See, when a public employee union in this state between January of 2010 and mid-year of 2013, put aside the political campaigns, spends tens of millions of dollars in ads that says things like, Chris Christie, he loves millionaires, he hates children. Now listen, no matter what any of you may think of me politically in this room, I do not believe that there is a person of goodwill in this room who believes that I hate children. Not one. But it is an interesting moment in a public servant's life when you're driving down the New Jersey Turnpike and your children see a billboard that says that their father hates children. Now, of all the things that I've said over time about leaders of our public employee unions, I've never said they hate their children. I've never said they hate their family. I don't think I've ever said they hate anybody. That's a big thing to say, everybody. And so I'm willing to take responsibility for some of the things that I say, and I know that at times I may go a little overboard. Get a little enthusiastic. I plead guilty to doing that. And there have been times I have apologized for doing that. I don't know whether the applause was for the admission, but you know, when you're a guy behind at a podium, any applause is good applause. So I want us to understand each other. Every action has a reaction. That's physics. Every action has a reaction. And so if we're going to judge those issues, and I'm happy to discuss them, but if we're going to judge them, let's make sure we judge them in a way where they're judged in their totality. Because I don't know if I love millionaires or not. Some of them I love, some of them I don't. I'd love to be one day. And I think everybody would love to have material success in this society. And I think that's part of what this organization strives to do, is to provide opportunity for success for every person in our society as they define that success, whether it's material success, spiritual success, professional success, personal success. But just that everybody has an equal opportunity to pursue how they define their own success. I will tell you that with the 3 years that I have left as governor, there's no more of that left for me to play. It's time to put touchdowns in the end zone. We've done a lot of them over the course of the last 5 years, and there's more for us to do. But in the end, I never am running for office in New Jersey again. And so the real question is, my legacy will not be defined by another election victory or loss. It'll be defined by what I accomplish with the time I have left in public service. Because believe me, by the way, when I say I'm never running for public office in New Jersey again, I mean I'm never running for public office in New Jersey again. The only job left for me to run for is United States Senate. And let me just say this. I would rather die than be in the United States Senate, okay? I would be bored to death. Could you imagine me banging around that chamber with 99 other people, asking for a motion on an amendment in a subcommittee? Forget it. It would be over, everybody. You'd watch me just walk out and walk right into the Potomac River and drown. That would be it. So I mean it when I say I'm not running for another office in the state again. So what we do with the next 3 years will help to define my legacy and the foundation that whoever the next governor is will build on. And what that means for our families will help to be determined by us. So I came here today because I felt the sincerity of Richard's invitation. It was not some letter that I got in the mail with the thousands of other invitations I got, which was a kind of a pro forma invitation where people say, well, why don't you come, but we really hope you don't. You know, like, I don't, you know, because I told Richard this when he invited me. I said, I'm coming. I said, I'm like the bad relative that you invite for the holidays, right? We all have this person, right? The bad relative that you don't want there, right? But you invite them out of obligation. You know what happens, right? That one always comes, arrives first, leaves last. So I told him that day, be careful, man, because if you don't mean this, I'm coming. I felt the sincerity of his invitation. And I told him I was coming because I felt that sincerity. So let's use this as a foundation for the next 3 years. Let's use the successes that we've had over the last number of months as a foundation for future successes that we can claim jointly and also feel good about. Not grudging compromises, but accommodations to each other's points of view that make us feel good about the fact that at least in New Jersey, unlike Washington, D.C., compromise is not a dirty word. Accommodation is not a dirty word. Working together is not a dirty phrase, but that we're working together across racial lines, ethnic lines, religious lines, political lines to actually get things done for the people that we're fortunate enough to serve and to live with. So thanks for giving me time to talk to all of you today. I appreciate it very much, and I look forward to working with the leadership of your group and any of the folks individually in this audience who believe that our collective goodwill can together overcome the problems that face our state. Thank you all very much.